I was just down in the grocery store, and I felt ever so slightly ashamed of myself for being kind of underdressed and, as you see, unshaven. And it just occurred to me, these same people in this grocery store, as weeks turn into months and as months turns into years, they're going to see me again and again. At a minimum, the security guards at the front of the grocery store are going to get to recognize me, but probably some of the customers. Right? Oh yeah, that bald guy, I bumped into him before. I thought, you know what? Probably I should make a little bit more of an effort with my physical appearance when going to the grocery store than today. But looking around, it really struck me that none of these people at my grocery store, many of whom are young and attractive and seemingly unmarried, the married couples you see as, they're in pairs, none of them are looking at one another as anything other than an obstacle to getting the next item off the next shelf in the next aisle. And I don't just mean there's like a difference in the vibe between this grocery store and, say, hanging out at a nightclub or going to a singles night at the Buddhist the Buddhist Studies Research Facility at Oxford University or Cambridge. Let me tell you something. There's some really eager eye contact going around when you're doing research in Buddhist philosophy. There's a contrast from what was going on at this grocery store and what I've been familiar with in recent days and weeks, just hanging around airports, hanging around on buses and boats and trains, because partly just out of boredom. Like when I was on the boat coming from the mainland to Vancouver Island, I got seriously interested eye contact from members of the opposite sex, and whatever. It's partly just the intense period of boredom of them waiting on that boat to get to the other side, and their imaginations running wild or whatever. They got nothing better to look at. I'm not that flattered by it. But it really occurred to me, visibly and invisibly, the way people live their lives is transformed because of the technology of the cellular phone. If any of these people wanted to put themselves in the frame of mind to meet somebody new, whether as a friend, as a boyfriend, as a girlfriend, or as a possible future husband or wife, they would take out their phone and start flipping through social media, whether that be a dating app or something like Facebook that's not expressly for dating but can be used for dating, whether it be Tinder or Bumble or whatever the software of the future is that competes in this category, right? Even while they're standing there at the grocery store, while they're standing in line or whatever, if their mind, if their imagination starts to turn in that direction, they're going to direct that energy and that interest into their cell phone and not into the eyes of the other strangers who happen to be standing around them, happen to be picking things off the store shelf. And look, there are advantages and there are disadvantages. It's somewhat funny to me that people meet me on the internet and think I'm short, right? Based on a photograph, whether it's on Tinder or a video here on YouTube, you don't know how tall somebody is. When people meet me in real life, the first thing they know about me is my height, right? Even if they don't think about it, even if they don't really notice, okay? I'm 6'3" in the morning when I get out of bed. If I'm hunched over and tired by the end of the day, I'm more like 6'2", by the way. You can lose an inch as the day wears on. The tone of my voice, probably the main thing that makes a first impression of someone meeting in real life is the way I speak, especially if their first language is English. My first language is English. Someone could get to know me, and people did. My first wife, when my first wife met me, she met me entirely in terms of text I'd written on the internet and a few still photographs. At that time, there was no video of me on the internet. There were no voice clips of me on the internet, right? She didn't know my tone of voice. She didn't know that stuff. The way somebody walks, their physicality, what it feels like to have eye contact with them, all right? In some ways, if you meet someone at the grocery store you actually know a lot about them that's meaningful and relevant to whether or not you feel attracted to them that you can't learn over the internet, or you don't learn easily, not even through Tinder, not even through Facebook. So there is something being lost. But what I want to draw attention to this video is there's something being lost at both ends, right? Like, it's not just this so-called pickup artist stereotype that changes. Like, I think like the shoppers themselves, and even this question I started with, should I make a bigger effort to get dressed to go to the grocery store? Like, I don't think people are motivated to do that anymore, because if they were going to make an effort to get dressed, they'd get dressed for Instagram. They'd get dressed for Tinder or Facebook. They'd get dressed to present themselves on social media, because that's where they're going to meet new people, whether those be friends or romantic connections or what have you. There's no point getting dressed to go to the grocery store. I knew a guy who was a real estate agent. So this conversation was more than 20 years ago, and he was probably talking about what life was like when he was single 10 years before that or something. And he just said to me straight up that when he's in New York City, he goes to all the bookstores to meet women. And he was just joking in this, he was exaggerating rather than joking. He said, who the hell goes to a bookstore to buy books? He said when he's in New York City, he goes to meet women. And when he goes, he feels the women are there for the same reason. Like, he's going to these bookstores, and all parties know this is a social place. People get dressed up to go to the bookstore, and you probably stand there and you're looking at books that don't make you look dumb. There's probably a performative aspect of this, but people were going to these social spaces with this preconceived notion. So Melissa is off camera here. Melissa, two of your grandparents met as complete strangers at a train station. And so the man who became your grandfather just straight up hollered at your grandmother. In modern parlance, like, hey, you look good. What's up? Whatever. I don't know what pickup line to use, right? There's meaning, but it's not just that it takes two to tango. It takes a whole culture built around that, a whole set of expectations, which probably includes what you wear when you go to the train station, and mentally how prepared you are to talk to a stranger. Because the most fundamental thing, one of the reasons why I tell people not to do this pickup artist bullshit, and by the way, I've been in the position of women trying to pick me up, and I'm like, you have no idea what's on my mind. Like, you have no idea what I'm dealing with. You have no idea how profoundly uninterested I am in being flirted with or flattered or dealing with you today, lady, and it doesn't even matter how good looking you are. It's like, that's my mindset, because I'm dealing with stuff you don't even know about. Like, these people at the grocery store, they are not going to be in a frame of mind to meet you and get to know you and get to know somebody, which is fine. It's totally your right, But again, when Melissa's grandparents were young, they were going to the train station, and they were probably going to the grocery store or the market. Move that in mind. Actually, I didn't even think of this before turning on the camera. But so when I did humanitarian work in Laos, I was in one of the last parts of the world with intact rainforest jungle. It was being cut down day by day. I saw the jungle being cut down. I was in one of the last parts of the world with no electricity and no internet and really zero telecommunications there on the border between Laos and Myanmar. Some people were living in tribal conditions. Some people were living in more settled village conditions. And I went to a market. This market was nothing but bamboo shacks, sheds for people to display their wares. I don't even know how to describe. Very, very simple, very primitive bamboo structures in the middle of the jungle, and there's the river on one side. People would come up on their boats to sell their wares. And all the young people from miles around would come there to meet new boyfriends and girlfriends. And, in this culture, in these primitive conditions, you're talking about like 15-year-olds, because they get married at 16 and 17 and so on, So they're dating at 15, and then they're getting married young. And again, this is one of the big cities in Laos aren't like that. That's the real countryside where people are still, it's not just that they're farmers, they're still hunters and gatherers. And, they'd come to the market, and you'd see them glancing at each other. You saw, this is one of the reasons, because otherwise they're living in complete isolation just with their family on the top of a mountain, or sometimes literally in a cave or what have you. I just say these are the last people in the world in those conditions. So obviously if you go back to medieval Europe or something, it's going to be even more extreme. This is your chance to meet and interact with a stranger, period. So mentally get yourself, into a space where you're going to meet someone, introduce yourself, and learn who they are and so on. But if you're not going out with that energy, if you're not going out with that vibe, this is what I thought of before turning on the camera. So I didn't think of that. This is what I really want to talk about was, there was a time when I traveled the world, and everywhere I went, people asked me for directions. And they always wanted more than directions. I'd be living in Vientiane, the capital city of Laos, and a French tourist would come up to me and say, "Hi, do you know the way to the military museum?" And I'd say, "Oh, yes, the military museum, I know it." And I'd describe, and it's not that easy to get to, and describe it. And then the French tourist would say, "Oh, I can tell you live here. Like you're not just a tourist like me. Tell me, how long have you lived here? Why did you choose to live here?" They would really want to get to know you as the source of that information. Obviously, I'm a white English-speaking person living there. I'm not just a local person. "Oh, what kind of work do you do here?" And, and sometimes they'd want to invite you to have coffee or have pizza or what have you. And maybe twice I pretended to be Russian and that I didn't speak English when tourists were asking me for help this way because I had other things to do. I really didn't want to hang around. But, my point is not just that, the map applications on cell phones like Google Maps, Apple Maps, it's not just that those have removed the necessity for people to ask for directions, but parallel to the change in the look in people's eyes when they go grocery shopping. Then now, grocery shopping is just about groceries, right? In the same way, now when I travel, nobody's trying to meet anybody. Nobody's trying to socialize with anybody. Not even like at a hostel, not even at like a social space at a hostel, not even if you sign up for a group tour. I can remember that. I remember if you sign up for a group tour where they explain the history of you, other people were there to meet, who else is living, who else is interested in this history. There was more of a social element. Today, if they want that, they're joining a Facebook group or they're signing up for something on the internet. When they put themselves in the frame of mind, introduce themselves and say, "Hey, this is who I am, who are you," to get to know people, they're doing that entirely on the internet, not face-to-face, not in real life. So, to an increasing extent, I've got to tell you, world travel has become a lonely, isolated and isolating pastime, and it used to be. It used to be. And again, I was someone who knew the local language, and I knew the history, and I knew the politics, and I lived there and worked there. But it used to be if I made my way past, say, 3 train stops in Thailand, like I was going up to Ubon Ratchathani, one of these obscure places, a whole long series of people would have conversations with me. And that would sometimes include other white people who'd chosen to live there permanently, foreigners who were there temporarily as tourists, who could include, by the way, Chinese or Japanese tourists, whatever. It would include local people. There was this whole kind of range of characters. And it's true, I'd have to kind of mentally, you couldn't be too tired or crabby or something. Even at the train station, even when sitting down and waiting for the train, kind of have to mentally prepare yourself, for the social aspect of travel. Of course, at the hotel, in any of those public spaces, and that is draining out of public life. And now look, I said earlier, there are certain things you learn about somebody, meeting them face-to-face in a grocery store, that you wouldn't learn right away on social media. Their height, the tone of their voice, the look in their eye, the eye contact. There's certain things you pick up on. Okay. The other thing you learn is they live in your neighborhood. We all know the ultimate absurdity of making friends on the internet is you might meet the most fascinating person in the world, but they live 3,000 kilometers away or 2,000 miles away or whatever the case may be. So what's the point, right? Someone you maybe have half as much in common with, but who goes to your grocery store is probably, more worth knowing for you. So, in many ways, I revel in the advantages of this new digital age. I think it's great that I'm not stuck being friends with the schlemiels who happen to be assigned to the same classroom I was assigned to in high school, where that's your only social use whole life and it's so hard to to make connections at that. If I were to list off the people I actually had meaningful conversations with this week, Melissa, I only know because of the internet. Mohammed, I only know because of the internet. I talked to Genevieve a little bit, talked to Adrienne. Maybe I talked to one or two other people I'm not remembering here. All of you, I only know you because of the internet. I don't think I had a conversation with a single person this week. Yeah, I did talk to a couple of people. I didn't talk to a single person this week whom I met, whom I know today for any reason other than the internet. So my social circle, as I pieced it together, both, close friends and distant acquaintances and what have you, they're all a result of the internet, and I do value it positively. But if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know where this is going. Sociability isn't just linked to your sex life. It's also, in a really powerful and important way, linked to political engagement and organization to make the world a better place or a different place. And there are so many issues I do care about, even here in Western Canada. But I don't have the critical mass of like 5 people who live here and care about the future of this neighborhood and this grocery store for me to get organized and go to City Hall or get organized and start a charity here. Do something about it. I mean, the most obvious issue here is the drug addiction epidemic. It would be easier for me to organize a bunch of white people who care about the future of Cambodia. I could do that today. I have the connections of the internet, I have the background, I have the history. There are some seemingly obscure issues where the specialists and the people who are passionate and motivated are spread all around the world, like veganism. Probably easier for me to do a fundraiser for something within veganism today than to organize something in my community, which is centered around one grocery store and one police station, with all the finitude of it, for me to get to know 5 people who can find some time to make something happen here. I was invited to give a lecture at a major vegan and animal rights conference in New York City. I appreciate the invitation. It's flattering. One of the most important reasons why I wouldn't spend the time and money to do that is that it's in New York City. So there's no way I can make the connections and collaborate with people in a way that's really going to matter to my life and our lives positively. There's no real chance of me making the kind of connection, which is possible, even if incredibly unlikely, when I'm standing there in the grocery store and I'm looking at the shelf full of frozen vegan junk food and someone else comes up next to me and they're getting something like, oh, I'm vegan, you're vegan too?